This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com. I am live with my weekly Wrestling Observer newsletter review. This week, I'm about to get into the second day of my time in a haunted house. I'm doing a little investigation right now, but I'm taking some time out because I know everyone wants to hear the news. So I'm in one of the upstairs rooms right now, about to give the news. The big news of the week, I'm doing very well, Anthony, is Rocky Johnson passed away, the father of The Rock. I did a full shoot interview with him. I guess he'd been sick for a few weeks, but he didn't want to go to the hospital. According to Brian Blair, the head of the Cauliflower Alley Club that also lived in Florida. I guess Rocky Johnson lived in Lutz, Florida, in a $800,000 home that his son, Dwayne Johnson, bought for him. And Rocky told me when he did his shoot interview with me off camera that The Rock also paid him a 300 grand a year salary. So that goes to tell you, if you're an older person, don't put off going to the hospital. He was 75 years old when he passed away, but unfortunately, that was pretty young. But some people say that he could have been 3 years older than the day he actually said he was born. AEW is going to be profitable this year due to a new deal they had with TNT and Warner Media that's going to pay them $45 million a year over the next 4 years for their Dynamite show. To compare that with what WWE gets for their shows, USA pays $265 million a year for Raw. Fox pays $205 million a year for SmackDown, and USA also pays $30 million a year for NXT. So overall, if you want to know why WWE still has money even though interest in their current product is down, you can tell by their huge TV deals there. The AEW deal is going to include another weekly 1 hour TV show. They're still going to do they're still going to do Dark on YouTube, and then there's going to be another 1 hour show on TNT. Taz has also signed with AEW. We reported a few weeks ago he had quit his radio job in New York City. Jesus Escobaza, the second La Parca, not to be confused with the first La Parca from WCW, passed away due to complications from doing a dive to the outside and hitting his head on the guardrail and floor. I guess his organs finally shut down. That match was for the Chaos promotion, and the match happened in Monterey back on October 20th. CMLL acknowledged his death. I'll just answer a couple of your questions before I move on. Has WWE or AEW approached Thunder Rose of NWA Power? I don't know. How's the haunted house thing going? I've done some tests, haven't experienced anything yet. My dog was acting a little strange last night. She usually follows me closely, but she would not follow me into one area of the house, the area that's supposedly supposed to be haunted. She would just bark from a distance. I had to actually pick her up to bring her into the area. But other than that, I did test my Ouija board in here last night. Absolutely no movement at all from it. So we'll see if there's anything more the next few days. Kazu Sakurada, who was the second Kenzo Nagasaki, not the first one from the UK. He also passed away this past week. He was known as the Dragon Master for a while in WCW. Alexander Ramos, you might need another person to use the Ouija board with. Well, yeah, I was not the only one in this house, and there'll be more people coming in here the next few days. I'm pretty much going to be here for the weekend, though. The Royal Rumble in Houston at Minute Maid Stadium has over 30,000 tickets sold right now. Dave Meltzer expects to have about 36,000 people in the building. Tessa Blanchard won the men's heavyweight world championship on Impact. WWE had passed on her, according to Dave Meltzer, because of attitude issues. Apparently, Scott D'Amore and Don Callis, the bookers for Impact, had plans to make her the main star of the company the whole way through. They did not release any attendance numbers or buy rates from the pay-per-view that Tessa won the title on. Allison Kay, aka Sienna, accused Blanchard of spitting on an African American woman and calling her the N-word in Japan. That African American woman was Black Rose, who confirmed that this happened. Renee Michelle also confirmed that this happened. Shannon of AEW, Chelsea Green, Britt Barker, Madison Rain, who recently signed with WWE, and Tanae Brooks all also confirmed about this racism of Tessa Blanchard, according to The Observer. Jared Orita says she's Puerto Rican, not African American. Well, she's Puerto Rican and she's also African American. I wrestled in Puerto Rico on some of the same cards as her. There's different colored skinned people in Puerto Rico, not just the Spanish skinned. There's also black skinned Puerto Ricans. Carlos Colon is one of them. La Rosa Negra, Black Rose, is another one. So Tommy Dreamer and Gail Kim, who are both producers in Impact Wrestling, stuck up for Tessa Blanchard. Of course, they work for Impact Wrestling. And above that, all the girls that complained about Tessa are on the same level as Tessa or below Tessa. Tommy Dreamer and Gail Kim are both legends in the business. As much as I don't like Tommy Dreamer, he is a legend in the business. Tessa is not going to treat a legend the same way she's going to treat a coworker necessarily. So Blanchard stated, "Nobody's perfect. We're all human," in relation to the allegations, I guess. And in other news, WWE NXT UK's takeover event in Blackpool had 2,500 fans in attendance. AEW Dynamite on January 15th this week had a 0.38 rating. They beat NXT's rating, which was a 0.28. AEW had their big Bash at the Beach episode, and it drew 3,900 fans live in attendance. AWO asked what happened between Tommy Dreamer and I. Search it up on the internet. Backstage did a 0.03 rating this past week. CM Punk is back on Backstage next week. Thus far, CM Punk has not affected the Backstage ratings too much from what I've seen. The episode with The Miz only did 3,000 less than the last episode CM Punk was on, and they have done higher rated episodes without CM Punk. Pampiro Firpo, as I already reported, passed away last week. Macho Man took a lot of Pampiro's promo stuff. Someone, what's his name? Feck Northside Villain said thoughts on Killer Kross signing with MLW. Killer Kross, I interviewed him last week. Look it up on this channel. He did not sign with MLW. He's only making an appearance for MLW on their Philadelphia show. It is expected that he has signed with WWE or is about to sign with WWE. Scarlett Bordeaux, his girlfriend, already is in NXT. AEW also has interest in him. But from what I've heard, all the rumblings seem to indicate Killer Kross is going to end up in WWE. But I suggest anyone that hasn't seen it, check out my interview with Killer Kross last week. Nice guy. I got along well with him. Andrea Hart, we reported on this before. This is the girl that I guess started dating Bruce Hart when he was around 37, and apparently she was in her early teens. He was her substitute teacher. They were divorced when she passed away on December 27th. They've been divorced for numerous years. She also briefly went out with Davey Boy Smith. I believe they were together when Davey Boy Smith passed away, unfortunately. But apparently, she had heart issues and developed flu like symptoms and passed away in her sleep. In other news, this is very interesting news. The Hannibal TV is going to be covering this year's Cauliflower Alley Club reunion again, as we did last year and the year before. Look up the past years on the Hannibal TV. But Terry Funk and JJ Dillon are going to be the MCs for this year's Cauliflower Alley. Now, Jim Ross isn't doing it this year. Last year, it was pretty funny. Gerald Briscoe was slipping Jim Ross drinks all night, and you could see Jim Ross getting progressively more and more funny throughout the whole night. But I am going to try and get a shoot interview with Terry Funk this year. Maybe it'd be a good time while I'm down there in Vegas. It's a great cause. They're helping out Rip Oliver right now. Rip Oliver and Billy Jack Haynes are going to be at WrestleCon this year in Tampa representing the Hannibal TV, but Oliver's had some serious heart issues lately, and I know the Cauliflower Alley Club is helping him out, so support them. There's going to be more on that as we get closer. MJF finished with MLW this week. He's purely AEW now. You watching McGregor versus Cerrone tomorrow? I'm actually in a haunted house that doesn't even have cable. I'll watch the highlights of it. I'm not a fan of lightweight fighters. McGregor's alleging he's making $80 million for that fight. Dave Meltzer thinks he's exaggerating that. He says no UFC fighter has ever been paid a base salary more than $10 million. If you count McGregor's pay-per-view bonuses and sponsorship bonuses, I believe it is possible with all combined, maybe he could get 80 million, but Meltzer is saying he doesn't believe that his flat pay could be over 10 million. So we'll see. For instance, another example of that is CM Punk. I actually looked it up because it came up in an interview of Sabu. He broke up the Ted Hart versus CM Punk fight, and he thought Punk only made like 60 grand for his UFC fights, but Punk was actually paid 500 grand for his first fight, plus a lot of bonuses, plus sponsorships. So according to Punk's wife, Punk actually made over $1 million for his first UFC fight. His second UFC fight, he made over 500,000. Do I ever sleep? Someone's asking me here and there. Yes. How's Meltzer so well connected? The Nexus is asking me because he's been reporting on the behind the scenes stuff for years, decades actually, since the 80s. So he knows a lot of people. Not everything's always right, but he is right more often than not, and he corrects himself when he's wrong. Has Lady Yasmin returned? No, she's quit wrestling. She's a quitter. There's talks about an MLW show in Hawaii this year, back to the news. MLW actually released his numbers, unlike Impact. MLW drew 1,387 fans in Dallas on January 11th, which I know is bigger than Impact had for their pay-per-view, where Tessa won the title. Marty Scurll, or Marty Squirrel, however you want to say his name, and Bandito have re-signed with Ring of Honor. PCO told me today he is actually under an exclusive Ring of Honor contract himself. So PCO, the world champion of Ring of Honor, he cannot wrestle for any companies but Ring of Honor, unless, of course, there's very special approval. But apparently Marty Scurll, or Squirrel. No, nothing against him. I just have a hard time pronouncing his name. But he is also going to be booking for Ring of Honor along with their longtime booker, Delirious. Ring of Honor sold out in Atlanta last week with 700 fans. They also had a show in Concord, North Carolina, January 12th, that had 500 fans, which is apparently down from their usual crowd. There will be some New Japan involvement in the April 4th Supercard of Honor in Lakeland, Florida, WrestleMania weekend. I believe Jay White is going to be on that card. I do have a good amount of Ring of Honor contacts these days, so I am going to see if perhaps the Hannibal TV can get a media pass to that Supercard of Honor. I would like to cover that. Someone says AEW should sign Goldberg. Well, he signed a 3-year deal with WWE. I agree. AEW should have signed Goldberg. They should have signed Punk just for the name recognition, but WWE signing them all up. It appears Brian Cage is going to AEW, according to Meltzer, although no official announcement yet. Obviously, they'd rather have that as a surprise, but he is done with Impact. He's not scheduled, according to Meltzer, for Impact's Mexico events coming up, their next tapings. Am I going to be at the big event convention in Queens? The Ultimate Warrior is asking me from the grave. No, that's a little too far for me, but I am going to be at the Albany event the next day, WrestleFest 2. 700 fans is like WrestleMania for Ring of Honor, someone commented. I agree. The next Saudi Arabia show is going to be February 27th. According to Meltzer, the Big Show's return is only temporary. Any truth to is AEW bringing in Vince Russo? Someone's asking. I've never heard anything about that. The Miz is going to have a new show on USA. It's going to be a competition-style show called Cannonball, which I guess for these Canadian fans watching, it's going to be like the Wipeout show that used to air in Canada, or the Nickelodeon, I think it was called GAC show or something. AEW is overrated, the Nexus says. I don't know. I haven't seen much of AEW. I am glad they signed the 4-year TV contract extension. It's going to make wrestling more interesting. My favorite Bruiser Brody match, Motor Stash is asking me. I think one of his tag team matches, almost any of his tag team matches with Abdullah against the Funks I liked from Japan. Jake Atlas, who I also interviewed last week at the PCW Ultra event, has signed with WWE, even though a lot of his friends are in AEW, and apparently there was interest in AEW. What's my opinion of Kenny Omega? I haven't seen much of him. He's had a lot of success. I have nothing against small wrestlers. I just don't like watching small wrestlers because I'm a heavyweight. So unless something really interesting happens, like I've seen some Omega highlights, but because he's considered a cruiserweight as far as I'm concerned, he doesn't really interest me for that reason, but I'm not saying he's not a great wrestler. I've heard he is a great wrestler. Jinder Mahal is going to be returning soon. Former Great North wrestler Jinder Mahal, former WWE champion. He had a patella tendon reconstructive surgery. So apparently he's recovered from that. The January 10th SmackDown last Friday in Evansville had 7,000 fans. Raw in Lexington, Kentucky this past Monday had 6,000 fans. Ryback, Silverback Gorilla says Jinder Mahal was awesome. Feck, Northside Villain says 3MB reunion. I'm a big Jinder Mahal supporter because probably around 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, him and I were very, very close. I'm not quite as close with him now. The last time I talked to him actually was when he was WWE champion. I suppose I could talk to him more, but I let him do his thing. In wrestling, like when you see the people in person, it'll be like we never saw each other. I was really proud of him when he won the title, the world title, because let me explain something to you. Back in the Stampede wrestling days, everyone thought Harry was going to be the world champion. Now, I love Harry, and he is the Hannibal TV heavyweight champion right now. But no one ever expected Jinder Mahal, of all people, would be the first of our Stampede wrestling little clique. Not clique, but like let's see who's from Stampede wrestling that's still relevant today. Jinder Mahal, Harry Smith, Tyson Kidd. He's an agent. His name was Apocalypse in Stampede, but he was Rick Victor. Just got released by WWE. Jinder Mahal, his partner Raj Singh, who is in Impact now with the Great Gamma. Randy Myers, who wrestles now in the U.S., I think for Evolve. He was part of our little group. Natalia was part of it. But I just think it's funny that Jinder was the first champion of that group. Red Thunder, he was around in that time. Wavell Star, he was around in that time, but he was a little older than us. My thoughts on Chelsea Green. Chelsea Green, the only problem I have with her is I did an audio interview with her on the Hannibal TV. She's all right. Unfortunately, she had a flight issue. She missed her Great North Wrestling match she was supposed to have, I think, 2 years ago due to a flight issue. So she never made that up to us, but she was never a bitch to me about it. And she did do an interview with me. So other than that, I thought she was good. That's why I wanted to bring her into Great North Wrestling. I'll answer a couple more questions here. Do I think Drew McIntyre is boring? Antonio Jones, or he says he thinks Drew McIntyre is boring. I also think he's boring. Yes. Would I consider running a show in Windsor, Detroit? No. Scott D'Amore runs Windsor. I don't interfere in other towns where other companies have a long time establishment. And even though I think Scott D'Amore is a horrible booker, he has Windsor. And you know what? I'm doing better at interviews now, and I really like doing interviews. So I don't think you're going to see too much of a expansion of Great North Wrestling. You're going to see 4 to 6 Great North Wrestling events a year. We already have 2 scheduled for this year, February 29th in Smith Falls, Ontario. Tickets are on sale now at ticketpro.ca. Only a handful of first row seats left. So if you want to be in the first row to see Haku, Barbarian, Lufisto, Too Cool Scorpio, Jeremy Prophet, Carla Duke, Blood Hunter, many more, Sexy Eddie, go to ticketpro.ca or the Galipo Center Theater. Get your tickets now. We're also going to have our 13th anniversary event in Ottawa, August the 8th. That's going to be a huge event. Tickets are not on sale for that yet. Last question. I'll answer a few. Have I interviewed Chris Vallet or Alicia Tout? Yeah, I've done 2 interviews with Alicia on here. Search them up. Really like her. My toughest interview I ever did was Juvie Guerrera. He was uncooperative. He needed alcohol to do the interview. He needed joints to do the interview. He gave short answers. He tiptoed around interview subjects. He didn't even give me the full hour that he paid for. And then after he complained about it, where I actually gave him an extra payoff that night above his wrestling pay. He was not on my interview list. I only interviewed him because he was coming to my town, but he was the biggest dick overall. I did not enjoy interviewing him. Juvie has also been banned from Conan's podcast. AA says. Feck, Northside Villain says he's so arrogant. And the funny thing is, he kept going on in that interview about positive energy. You can even hear it at some points in this interview. From about half an hour on, he starts tapping his foot. So that is just rude. When you're interviewing someone, I can understand looking at your watch or tapping your foot if I've gone overtime, but I try and be respectful to the people I interview, and whatever time I've paid for, I try and keep out of respect, because I take my job as a journalist serious. And when you start tapping your foot in an interview, that's fucking rude. He's a rude piece of shit. I heard another podcast. I actually heard Jim Ross, who everybody knows on here. I love Jim Ross. He said in a podcast that Juvie's problems are all his own. He could have been a bigger star in the wrestling business, but he's had a lot of alcohol problems, attitude problems, and drug problems over the year. As I said in another interview, Jack Evans beat up Juvie Guerrera. Now, Jack Evans is one of the most mellow guys ever. He's another Calgary guy that was involved in the early days of Stampede Wrestling. And like for Jack Evans to get in a fight with you, you have to be a pretty big dick because he is such a mellow guy. So why isn't Kalisto more popular in WWE? I don't know. Why do I think they fired Juvie Guerrera? Well, from WWE, apparently it was because he did a 3 or a 450 splash on Paul London, and Juvie Guerrera landed on Paul London's face. London had to get reconstructive surgery, and Juvie was told not to do another 450 splash. Then he did another 450 splash. Then he was fired. So we'll close it at that. I'm going to continue my investigations of this haunted house in the next few days. I know not everyone's interested in this, but I am, and I'm going to continue. I'm not going to do a lot of videos about this, but I will do a wrap up about this. Do I think Brian Cage is on stuff? You know, I don't answer questions about that. People are smart enough to know what a human body can look like naturally. So yeah, have a good night, ever. Have a good afternoon.